Nikki McPhatter was a single woman looking to find Mr. Right through the world of online dating. But you know what they say about people on the internet? You can never be too sure who you're talking to. So today's video is going to be another solved true crime case. Today we're going to be discussing the murder of Nikki McPhatter. But quickly, before we get into the case, I do just want to thank our sponsors for making this video possible, Casetify. It's that time of year again. It is time for the new iPhone launch. The iPhone 14 Is it out by the time this video comes out? I don't know if it's already out or not, but I will be upgrading. I am such an Apple stan. And if you're thinking of doing the same thing, then you want to make sure that you're protecting your precious new phone with a good case. And Casetify have upped their game lately. I didn't think this was possible. I didn't think it could get any more protective than a Casetify phone case, but they have stepped it up for the iPhone 14 release. They have a new technology called EcoShock technology, which makes their iPhone 14 impact cases 20% more protective than their existing ones. Can you believe that? This new technology doesn't make the phone case any bulkier or thicker or heavier. It is the same slim, sleek, nice looking phone case it's always been. And with this new technology, the phone cases are now 11.5 foot drop protected. That is insane. That's their highest drop test yet. And they've been tested over 130 times, so you know you can trust it. I'll even prove it to you as well. So this is my phone before, no cracks, no scratches. Do you like the slippers, by the way? Anyway. And would you look at that? She's fine. The phone cases are still made with 65% recycled and plant-based materials. They're also MagSafe and wireless charging compatible, so you don't have to like fiddle about taking your phone case off if you want to use wireless charging. The phone case, it works through the phone case. And you know you can trust Casetify to make the cutest designs ever. There's so many different styles to choose from. There is something for everyone's aesthetic, and of course you can customize these phone cases as you can the other ones. I love putting my name on my phone cases. So whether you are upgrading your phone or not, I have always genuinely recommended Casetify phone cases to everyone in my life because I have truly never come across phone cases so protective and so cute. Those are the two most important things to me. So if you want to get one for yourself, you can go to casetify.com/Eleanor and a 15% discount code will be automatically applied at checkout for you. You can click the link down below in the description. That'll do the same thing. Thanks again to Casetify for sponsoring this video. Now quickly, before we get into the actual case, I do just want to give my usual disclaimer that I mean absolutely no disrespect to anyone that I talk about in this video. This video is for educational purposes and everything that I'm about to say is just information that I have found on the internet and I'm compiling into one video. I don't think there's any major content warnings for this case, which makes a change, which makes me think I've done something wrong, so I'm so sorry if I've missed any, but I don't think there's any like particular topic warnings for this one. So with all that being said, let's get straight into the case. Nikki McPhatter was a 30-year-old woman from North Carolina, born in September of 1978. All her life, Nikki had been a very strong, ambitious, determined and hard-working woman. She had big goals for her life and she was gonna make them happen. She studied hard all the way through school, got pretty good grades, I think, and then after school, she went off to join the Navy. Her family were a little bit apprehensive about this decision of hers. They knew they had to let her do it because she was such an adventurous, go-getting, determined person that there was no way that they could stop her from doing this, but they were a little bit worried for her. Of course, this is quite a dangerous, scary job. But Nikki was always looking for the next adventure in her life, and I think at this point she'd been in school for just far too long. She needed to get out there into the world and do something like hands-on, something that required a lot of her energy. Her family like expressed their concerns to her a little bit and she was like, no, guys, I need to do this. This is the next step for me. And so she went and joined the army and she really enjoyed it. One of the things she liked the most about that job was like traveling to different places. I don't know exactly where she went and for how long, but she was in the Navy for a good few years and she was dotted about all over the place. She saw some parts of the world. But yeah, she was doing that for a few years until eventually she came back home to North Carolina where she got a bit more of a calm job. She was a ticket woman at an airline. So she starts kind of like building up her life now. She's like solidifying her friend group. She's got this job. She's meeting new people. She wants to meet a boyfriend as well. And so Nikki signs herself up to a bunch of different dating websites. She wants to see what her options are. You know, what kind of men are out there for Nikki McPhatter? She got chatting to a few different guys. She kind of liked a few of them. She went on a few dates here and there. She'd been seeing a couple of the guys and she'd been telling her sister about them and a couple of friends about them. But she was a bit secretive. It was like she wanted to talk about her dates and stuff. She wanted people to know that she was going on a date, but she didn't want to like divulge the private details. She was quite to herself when it came to that. So all her friends and family really knew was that she was going on dates with guys. Sometimes she would tell them his first name or whatever, but she wouldn't tell them too much because she was just keeping it to herself. In February of 2009, she met a guy on one of these online dating websites and started dating him properly. Like, they were seeing each other. They would go and stay at each other's houses. He didn't live too far away, maybe like 30, 40 minutes away. So they would go and stay and like hang out together on evenings. Like, they were a thing. They weren't boyfriend and girlfriend, but they were getting there. And again, Nikki never really told her friends and family too much about this guy. She would always refer to him as her new friend. So yeah, she would tell them like bits and pieces. She would tell them about dates, but she wouldn't tell them about him. Like, oh, I went here with my new friend, or I'm going to stay at my new friend's this weekend. So her family knew what was going on, but they just didn't know who this guy was. From the way that Nikki spoke about this man, her family could tell that she liked him. Like, she was excited about this. She was like a giddy little like teenage girl. She was going to see a new friend. And this man that Nikki was so secretive about was 30-year-old Theodore Manning, also known as Ted. Well, actually, to Nikki, he was Teddy. It was like their cute little pet name that she would call him, Teddy. For the sake of this video, I will just be calling him Theodore or Ted. But yeah, Nikki and Ted had a lot in common because they'd had like quite similar lives. So they were both very, very hardworking, ambitious, determined people, worked super hard in school. Then when they left school, they both joined the army. He did that as well. They were there for a few years, traveled around, and then after a few years, he also decided he'd had enough and settled into a normal life, a normal job. So they could relate to each other on like every stage of life that they'd been through. They had so many shared experiences, so much to talk about. There were a few differences between Theodore and Nikki. He was a father. He'd actually been previously married and divorced, and he had a son to that previous relationship. Although I don't think he really looked after the son all that much. I think the son lived with his mother and Theodore just paid like child support. And like I said, he didn't live too far away from Nikki. He lived like 30, 45 minutes away from her in a place called Columbia. She lived in Charlotte. And yeah, they would go and like stay at each other's houses on weekends, have like sleepovers, and she was so smitten. All her friends and family could tell. She was quite a secretive woman, but she couldn't hide those emotions. But as the months went on, the way that Nikki talked about this relationship started to change. She wasn't as like bright and happy and bubbly and excited about it anymore. She started complaining of Ted's flaws more and more. They'd been arguing quite a bit. The main thing that they would argue over was his inability to commit to Nikki. So the arrangement that they kind of had established right now was kind of like a friends with benefits. Although it was very clear that Nikki had genuine feelings for him. She wanted to be more than friends with benefits. She wanted to be his girlfriend, potentially even his wife one day. But this guy did not want to commit to anyone. And in fact, Nikki wasn't the only girl that he was seeing. He had like a few girlfriends or a few like side chicks, and she knew about that. Like, he didn't make any effort to hide it from her. It wasn't like he was cheating on Nikki and having like affairs and whatever. He was very open about his boundaries and his rules. He didn't want a relationship, but he was happy to keep seeing Nikki as long as there were like no major strings attached. And Nikki liked him, so, you know, they kept seeing each other. They were just sleeping together. They were not in a relationship. And at first, this was an all right deal for Nikki. I mean, yeah, whatever. But as time went on and she was developing more and more feelings for him, she started asking him, like, look, can we take this seriously? Can we cut everyone else off? Can we focus on each other? And every time he would say, no, that's not what I want. And this would cause argument after argument. And eventually, in May of 2009, so they'd only been dating like 3 months, Nikki had had enough. And she told her sister, LaToya, that like, I can't do this anymore. I'm going to have to break things off with him. So she planned to do one last trip to his house in Columbia to pick up some of her stuff from his house. And that was going to be the last time she ever saw Ted Manning. She was going to like properly break things off with him and focus on herself. Go find someone new that was going to take her seriously. I actually think they'd pretty much already broken up over like a phone conversation or something at this point, because I think the plan was she was going to his house to get her stuff. Like they'd already split up, and this was like, it wasn't like she was going there to break up with him. I think the vibe was already set. So on May 6th, 2009, Nikki McPhatter makes the drive from Charlotte to Columbia for the very last time. She was ready to cut this man out of her life. She went kind of earlier on in the day because I think she had an evening shift at the airport later that evening. So just before noon, about 11:45, she texted a friend just saying that she was on her way to his house. But that text was the last time Nikki McPhatter was ever heard from. Later that day, she didn't show up to her shift at the airport, and as her friends and family were trying to get in touch with her over the coming days, they couldn't. She wasn't responding to any texts, she wasn't returning any calls. Now, this wasn't immediately concerning to Nikki's friends and family because, like I said, she was a bit of a live wire. She was a bit adventurous. She did, you know, sometimes she was a little bit crazy. Sometimes she might just like disappear for a bit. Her sister literally just thought she'd upped and left town for a few days because I think that was quite within Nikki's character. She did stuff like that quite often. She seemed like quite a fun lass. So her sister thought she'd just gone out of town for a while, but when she wasn't answering her phone for days, that was when it wasn't very Nikki. Like, yeah, Nikki might go off and have fun and have crazy wild times, but she would always text her sister back. She would always return calls to her family. Like, she loved them. She wanted to stay in contact with them. So this was now unusual. Eventually, after 5 days of not seeing or hearing from Nikki, her friends and family reported her missing to the police, and a full investigation was launched. Police were on it, even her friends and family were on it. They were like making their own missing persons posters, printing them all out, putting them all over town. They were just like walking around town, talking to people, asking people if they'd seen her. Quite interestingly, police's immediate theory in this case was foul play. Even though Nikki McPhatter was known to be quite adventurous and a live wire, and potentially it could have been in her character to go missing for a few days and it be kind of a reasonable explanation. All that being said, the circumstances of Nikki's disappearance did not seem right at all. She was in the middle of a normal day. She had a shift at work later that evening and she'd never missed a shift. She had 100% attendance at her job. She'd never missed a shift. And even if she was to miss a shift, I'm sure she would have called up and explained why. But she didn't. She hadn't been heard from in over a week. She hadn't even used her phone. I mean, police were looking at this case thinking, there's a very low chance we're gonna find this woman alive. Of course, police interviewed all Nikki's family and friends to try and get an idea of her life, and as soon as they heard that she'd been dating this guy that she'd met online and things had turned sour and she'd gone to break up with him that day, of course, police are like, okay, well, suspect, obviously. So yeah, the prime suspect for Nikki's disappearance at this point in the case is Theodore Manning. Police managed to find his name, I think, through like Nikki's accounts or something, because obviously she never told her family. They managed to find his name and his address, and they went down to his house to go and speak to him. Immediately, he is denying everything. He's saying he has no idea where she is, he hadn't heard from her in over a week, and he was telling police that they weren't that serious anyway. She wasn't even his girlfriend. They were just like sleeping together. He admitted to police that he had like multiple other girlfriends and side chicks that he was speaking to, so Nikki wasn't like his girlfriend the way that it sounded. Because obviously that's what her family thought. Her family thought she had a boyfriend, or like at least like, you know, a serious guy in her life, because she'd never told them that he was dating like 6 other women at the same time. So yeah, he had to tell police. He was like, look, I have a lot of them. I have a lot of them girlfriends. And police got a frickload of evidence for this as well, because they seized his phone when they arrested him and they looked through his phone records, and yeah, he's like texting, calling so many different women. It was a bit crazy. And police decided it might be quite useful to speak to some of these other women. Of course, they were pretty close to Ted Manning, so they might have some information or, you know, some useful insights. So they did a few interviews with a few of these different women. And there was one woman in particular that police were quite interested to talk to, a woman named Kendra Goodman, one of his girlfriends. Ted had actually called her, I think, the evening that Nikki went missing. And so, of course, police were interested to know what he'd been saying to Kendra Goodman. So police got all of Kendra's details. They had her phone number, her home address. They tried calling her up a few times to be like, hey, can you come in for an interview? But she was dodging every single call. They called her multiple times. She just wasn't picking up. And so they decided to go to her home, knocked on her door. She didn't answer. She was proper avoiding police. So this was over the course of a few days that they tried calling her. They go and knock on her door, whatever. In the meantime, as all of that had been happening, police had managed to get hold of Nikki McPhatter's bank details, and they could see that her bank had been completely inactive from the day that she was last heard from, which is never a good sign. If someone's not using their card, even to get cash out, if they're not using it at shops or anything, that means they're not buying food or water. It means they're probably not alive. Actually, the last time this card was used, it was used once on the day that Nikki disappeared. It was used at an ATM to get a few hundred in cash out, which was quite interesting to police. So they decided to look into that a little bit further. But we'll get back to that in a minute. Hold that thought. As they're trying to look into that, they're still trying to contact Kendra Goodman. She is still ignoring them for days and days and days until finally she picks up the phone. And Kendra has a hell of a story to tell. She sat there and she said that on the day that Nikki disappeared, Ted had called her and he seemed like he was in quite a flirty mood. He was asking her what she was up to and she was like, oh, you know, I'm just like driving around. And he was like, oh, well, don't waste gas. Drive here. Come here. Come see me. So she did. Kendra drove to Ted's house, and when she arrived, she said that he was out on the driveway working on a car. He said it was his friend's car. He was just fixing this car up. It was a black Honda, and it was a really nice car, to be fair. Kendra even commented about how the rims on the car were really nice. And Ted turned to her and he was like, oh, do you think these rims would fit your car? Almost as if he was like offering them to her. His friend's rims off his car. For whatever reason, Kendra didn't take them, and the two of them just kept talking as Ted was fixing this car, and eventually he was done. And then he had a bit of a favour to ask Kendra. He asked if she would drive with him in her car to drop off the friend's car at their house, and then would she give him a lift back home afterwards. Of course, Kendra agreed. This was her boyfriend after all. Were they official? I don't think he was official with any of his girlfriends, but come on, she was his girlfriend. So she said yes. The two of them start driving out. Ted was in front in the black Honda. Kendra was behind in her car, just following him. They drive out like into the middle of nowhere. Kendra has no idea where they are. And then all of a sudden, Ted turns into a church parking lot. And so she follows him in. He got out of the car and came to speak to her, sat in her car. And he was like, right, okay, this is the plan. You wait here in this church parking lot. I'm going to take this car out to where I'm meeting my friend. I'll give it to him, you know, we'll sort all that out, and then I'll walk back to you here at the car park, and then you can drive me home. Cool plan. So Kendra sits in her car and she watches as Ted drives away in this black Honda. She watches him drive down the road a little bit, and then he turns down a dirt track, and then she doesn't see him for, I think, a couple of hours. Eventually, Ted returns to the car, and she remembered thinking, as soon as he opened that door, that he smelt really strong of gasoline, which was odd because he didn't smell like that before. And actually, when she smelt this gasoline smell, it kind of sent her brain ticking, because while he'd been gone, she'd heard a really, really loud bang. And kind of at the time, she didn't really think much of it, because sometimes you do just hear bangs. You know, sometimes stuff just happens nearby and you hear a big bang for no reason. You don't always think about it. But now, so bear this in mind, they were in the middle of nowhere. They were in the middle of nowhere. This guy returns to the car, smells like gasoline, and she's just heard a bang. She's putting two and two together. What the hell was he doing down that dirt track? So she was like, oh, why do you smell like gasoline so strong? And he was like, oh yeah, me and my friend that I was taking the car to, we decided to just burn a load of crap that we had in our cars. We had like a bit of a bonfire. Random. I don't know, it wasn't very explained, but for some reason Kendra just accepted that explanation and they drove home. So yeah, the two of them go back to their normal lives for a few days, and she doesn't really hear that much from Ted since then, until now, when she's got police knocking her door down, asking about him, and it seemed as though Kendra could be involved. But police didn't think that everything was quite as it seemed with Kendra Goodman. I mean, her story, there was a couple of plot holes in it, wasn't there? What do you mean he just returned smelling of gasoline? You heard a massive bang. He was alone on a dirt track for a couple of hours. And you're just thinking, oh, okay, cool, yeah, you had a bit of a bonfire, just drive him home. Why are you not questioning what he was doing for so long? Yeah, there were a few parts of her questioning where Nikki kind of let a few things slip. It was obvious that she was trying to cover a couple of things up or maybe hide what she knew. She wasn't letting everything on. So for example, she said she had no idea who Nikki McPhatter was. She had no idea about the missing persons investigation. Like she literally was clueless to this whole case before she spoke to police. But then later on in that same interview, she admitted to police that she knew that the black Honda that they were driving and that Ted was fixing, she knew that that Honda was Nikki's. So you're telling me you have no idea who Nikki is, you don't know about a missing persons case, but you somehow know that Ted Manning has her car. Make that make sense. There was that, and there were a few other like similar things that she did throughout her interviews that made police just really suspicious of Kendra Goodman. And their initial theory was that maybe Kendra Goodman had murdered Nikki McPhatter because she was jealous. Maybe Kendra had found out that Ted Manning had multiple other girlfriends and she didn't like that. And so she decided to take one of them out. That's genuinely what police thought. And so they went back to Kendra and they said, look, would you be willing to do a polygraph test, a lie detector test, so that you can, like, we can know for sure if you were involved in this or not? And she agreed. She was willing to do this test. But Kendra failed the lie detector test. She'd been lying in all of her interviews. So police confronted her with this and they were like, look, just tell us the truth. Just tell us the truth. It's here in black and white that you're lying. And eventually Kendra cracked. She agreed to take police to the scene where she had been waiting for Ted to return to the car for a few hours. She was going to take police to that dirt road that he'd been down. When police arrived at this dirt track, they immediately spotted a burnt out car. And this car was so badly burnt, like even the rims were melted and everything. Like this was a serious fire. Police approached this car to have a look inside, and when they did, things only got a million times more sinister, because in the boot of that car, they found charred human remains. Literally just bones at this point. So a very clear picture is starting to emerge. Someone was trying to get rid of this body. But that only arises more questions. Did this fire kill this person in the car, or were they already dead and was the fire set to get rid of their body? Well, when the remains were recovered, those questions were answered, because it seemed that there was a bullet hole in the back of this victim's skull. They were already dead when this fire was set. This made it seem like they were murdered. They were shot, and then their body was burned to hide the evidence. So of course, police are immediately thinking the worst, that these must be the charred remains of Nikki McPhatter. But it wasn't going to be that easy to determine because, like I said, the remains were burned beyond belief. They were practically just bone right now. They were unrecognisable. When the remains were sent off to the morgue, they were eventually identified through dental records. And yes, this was Nikki's body. And like I said, so much of her had burned in the fire that when her family got her remains back, they were handed them in a tiny little box. Like, so much so that her family looked at it and they just thought, surely not. Like, that can't be all of Nikki that's left just in this tiny little box. Their sister, their best friend, like in a box. It just didn't seem right. Her family were just so devastated that this was what they had left of Nikki to be able to lay her to rest. But there was good news following this discovery. They now had physical evidence that Nikki McPhatter was murdered, and they blooming knew who it was. That exact same day that her remains were found, police moved in and arrested Theodore Manning on suspicion of her murder. So they wanted to build up their evidence against this guy, and the most obvious first step to be able to do that was to get a search warrant for his home, because that was where Nikki was going that day. She was going to his house to break up with him, to go and pick up all her stuff, so maybe that's where he murdered her. So of course there'd be evidence in there. And police were right. On one of Ted's white bedroom walls, there was just red blood spatter all up it. Like, he'd made no attempt to try and clean it or hide it or anything. It was obvious, so obvious. And when it was tested, this blood was a match to Nikki McPhatter. It seemed she had been shot to death in Theodore Manning's bedroom, and then her body must have been put in the boot of her own car and taken out to the middle of nowhere to be burned. Police kept trying to search his house for more evidence. They couldn't find any guns, so they didn't have the murder weapon. But the blood evidence all over his bedroom wall was strong enough. They didn't really need anything else, but of course they wanted supporting evidence. And actually, they got a really good piece of supporting evidence after this. Do you remember I said her bank card was used at an ATM to get some cash out, and so they were going to look at the security cameras to see who got that cash out? It was Theodore Manning. Of course it was. It was Theodore Manning. Not only that, it was Kendra Goodman as well. The two of them were also seen on CCTV at a supermarket buying bleach. Just bleach. It wasn't bleach as part of like a whole household shop. They went to the shop specifically for bleach. And I'm sure we're all thinking the same thing about that. Bleach? To clean a crime scene, maybe? They also found the receipt for this bleach in Ted's house. So the evidence is just all intertwining, it's all building up, and it is not looking good for him. This is looking like it's going to be a pretty easy case. But one thing that police, investigators, Nikki's family even, just couldn't understand about this whole case was why. Why had Theodore Manning wanted to kill Nikki that day? Because as far as everyone was aware, he didn't want to be with her anyway. A lot of people's theories was that she went there to break up with him. He didn't like that she was trying to break up with him, and so he shot her. But that don't make sense because he didn't want to be with her anyway. So what on earth could have happened in that house to make him want to murder her? Could it have been premeditated? Did he know that he was going to shoot her before she even got there that day? Or what most people think happened was that there was probably a bit of a heated argument once they were there at the house. Things got out of control. He picked up a gun and he shot her in the heat of the moment. That seemed like the more plausible theory. Well, we do have a version of events from Theodore Manning. Whether we can believe his version of events is a different thing, but we do have his version of events, because now that he was charged with murder, he realised he wasn't really going to be able to lie his way out of this one. Oh, don't worry, he tried, but he realised that he wasn't really going to be able to lie. So he told police a story. I don't know if it's the real one, but he told police a story, and I'm going to tell you that story now. He said that the way that things went down on this particular day, Nikki came to his house and they were having the same conversation that they had had over and over again. She wanted to be with him. She wanted to be his only woman. She wanted him to cut off every other girl that he had going on at the moment, and he was just saying, nah, like, I'm not. Like, he'd been saying no this whole time. He had been, maintaining that boundary. He hadn't been leading her on or lying to her. He had been saying, no, I am not getting rid of my other girlfriends for you. And this conversation on this day went exactly the same. And he said that as time was going by, Nikki just was not backing down. Like, usually she'd back down after a while and then they'd make up and they'd get on with the day. But she wasn't this time. Actually, if anything, she was getting more and more angry as the argument was going on. She starts shouting at him. She's like standing up. She's like flailing her arms about. She starts pushing him. And at one point, she turned around and Ted Manning had a bag on the floor that had a loaded handgun in it. And apparently Nikki knew that this gun was in there because she turned around, reached straight in that bag, pulled out this gun and aimed it at Theodore Manning. So at this point, he fears for his life. He knows that that handgun is loaded, and so he jumps up and tries to wrestle this gun out of her arms. They're struggling for a while until eventually the gun accidentally fires and Nikki falls to the ground. Theodore Manning was trying to tell police that he had accidentally shot Nikki McPhatter in the back of the head as part of a struggle. And that was how she died. Now, I don't know about you guys, but this is the fakest cover story I personally have ever heard in my entire life. With this story, Ted has painted it in a way that it is all Nikki's fault. He was the victim, he was acting in self-defense, the death was accidental, and it was her own fault because she picked up the gun in the first place. This if it was believable, would be the perfect cover story. But it's not believable, even in the slightest. Of course it's not. First of all, Nikki was going there that day to leave him. She wasn't interested in keeping this relationship going with him. She wouldn't sit there and beg and shout and scream for hours to have him back. She was ready to leave him. She was going there to pick up her clothes. So it don't make sense that they got into this argument in the first place. But the main, damning piece of evidence that this story is a load of crap is that the bullet hole was in the back of her skull. How were you having a struggle trying to gain control of this gun and somehow it made its way all the way back here and shot her? If it had accidentally discharged in the middle of a struggle, someone might have been shot in the arm, or the chest, or the torso, maybe even a leg, not the back of the head. How are you getting it all the way around there? Doesn't make sense. That was not an accidental gunshot wound. Can't have been. And realistically, if this had actually all been an accident, she died because he was trying to defend himself and the gun accidentally discharged, why did he then go to such great lengths to cover this up, to dispose of Nikki's body? If this had been an accident, why wouldn't he call emergency services, try and get her an ambulance? You know, if she's been shot accidentally, why are you just accepting the fact that she's dead and, oh, now I've got to burn her body? He didn't even try to save her. That didn't even cross his mind. And police were also incredibly suspicious of Kendra Goodman, of being more involved in this attack than she says she was. Actually, not so much the attack. They didn't think she was involved in the murder itself, but she was certainly more complicit in the cover-up and the aftermath than she said she was. This whole time, she'd been saying oh, I had no idea there was a body in the car. I don't even know who Nikki is. We just drove those cars out. I didn't know what was going on, blah, blah, blah. But police think she knew exactly what she was doing. She knew that she was an accessory to murder. They think she knew that there was a dead body in the back of that car and that she was taking her boyfriend out into the middle of nowhere to burn it and then she was going to take him home again. They think she knew exactly what was going on at every single point during this. Police could actually tell, and this is a really horrid TMI little fact about this case, but police could tell from forensic investigations inside the bedroom. Do you remember the bedroom was where the blood was spattered all up the wall? They believed that that was where Nikki was killed. Well, forensic tests could also tell that Theodore Manning and Kendra Goodman had gone back there the same evening and had sex in that room with blood all over the walls. And Kendra's trying to say she had no idea who Nikki was. She has no idea what happened to her. What do you mean you've gone back to your boyfriend's house and had sex with him when there's blood all over the walls and you're not questioning it? But that's not even it. It gets even worse for Kendra because actually that same day, or maybe the next day, Ted gave her a load of money, hundreds of dollars in cash. I think it was about $800 in cash. And she didn't question it. Of course, police think that this cash is from when they went to the ATM with Nikki's card. This is Nikki's money. But Kendra didn't care. Kendra didn't question it. I think she knew exactly where that money had come from, but she was just going to keep it quiet. With all of this in mind, police decided to also charge Kendra Goodman with being an accessory to murder. And so the trials began. But the trial of Ted Manning, it's going to infuriate you. I'm sorry. It infuriated me. You're not going to like this one. So his defense team obviously don't want him being sent down for murder. No defense team ever does. They always try and get him a lesser charge, be it manslaughter or whatever. That's what they were going to do. They were going to try and get him manslaughter instead of murder. And they were doing this based on the story that Ted told, that they got into a heated argument, Nikki pulled a gun on him, and so in self-defense, he wrestled it away from her and it accidentally discharged and accidentally killed her. Because if that was true, then yeah, that would be manslaughter because he wouldn't have intended to kill her. But come on. And frustratingly, it worked. It worked. The jury, the whole court believed Ted Manning's story that the gun had accidentally gone off, despite physical evidence of her literal skull saying otherwise. The gunshot was on the back of her head. But yeah, the jury agreed that this was manslaughter. And so Ted Manning was found guilty of voluntary manslaughter and sentenced to 30 years in prison for Nikki's death. And everyone was absolutely fuming about this, as I'm sure you can imagine. Police, investigators, Nikki's family. This was so obviously a murder that this man was semi-getting away with. and there was nothing that anyone could do about it. Going back to Kendra Goodman, she was found guilty of being an accessory to murder, and she was sentenced to 2 years in prison for her part in the cover-up. But yeah, that is all I have on this case. An infuriating one. Absolutely infuriating. Nikki McPhatter lost her life for absolutely no reason, and Ted has never given his motive before, because obviously he still denies it. He's still sticking to this story. But why would he kill her that day when she didn't even want to be with him anyway? She wanted out of his life. She was trying to get out of his life, and he just took hers. But yeah, that is all I have for this case. Thank you so much for watching, and thanks again to Case25 for sponsoring this video. If you're upgrading to the new iPhone 14, you might want to get a new phone case for that. And even if you're not upgrading, these are the best phone cases around town. So if you want to go to case25.com/Eleanor, there will be a 15% discount code applied automatically at checkout for you. A huge thank you to all of my channel members for supporting the channel and helping me decide the cases that I cover. All of my tier 2 members are on screen right now, so thank you so much. If you want to become a channel member, you can click the join button down below. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed, please leave a thumbs up down below. That would really help me out. If you want to subscribe, you can click this circle right here, or if you want to watch a different one of my vids, there you go. Got one. There you go. Okay, bye!